Hello everyone, my name is Anirudh Singla. I am the co-founder and CEO of Pepper Content. Welcome to the Content Marketing Leaders. We have Chris Anderson with us today. Hey Chris, this is a pleasure hosting you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, hello. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So Chris, I was just going through Chris' profile and I was blown apart by the kind of experiences this person has had, ranging from Hong Kong to overall Asia to obviously the States. And he's seen this amazing journey across different industries. So Chris, I think the first question to you would be, if you were to narrate your journey in the classic editorial style, what would that look like? What got you first into marketing? What was that first touch point with content? And over time across different roles, how have you grown? How has the journey changed? And would love to end at where you are right now.
Maybe kind of the Forrest Gump of marketing. In a way, I kind of stumbled into a few areas, and I think that I went into quality assurance actually when I graduated. So I actually tested toys for 3 years right out of college.
Oh wow.
And got exceptionally bored doing that. You can only test so many toys in the dark, and feel like this is a fulfilling thing. So I actually changed my direction by moving overseas and giving myself a chance to do something different. And that really was the initial spark for me to get into content and editorial, and it just launched me into where I've ended up, which has been traveling all around, working in media and banking, different sectors. It's been quite the journey, for sure.
Amazing. And just talk to us more about the different kind of companies you've been in.
Sure.
And what kind of roles were you playing, and how has personally your role evolved also over time?
Yeah. I've pivoted many times. If I go back to after that quality assurance period, I went into a travel publication, and that kind of gave me my role and getting into the space. Went back to Hong Kong, worked for CNN, building a startup internally at CNN as associate editor.
Wow.
Called CNN Go at the time. And that was a new thing for CNN to be doing, kind of a travel current events focused, but not hard news. It's actually called CNN Go, and everything is called Go now, right?
Wow.
Like Go is Go or Plus, Apple Plus, CNN Go. And from there, I actually went to New York, worked for Huffington Post as a senior travel editor, Business Insider in New York, and then launched I didn't launch. I came into a startup called Pixable, which was a pivot. It was actually a pivot from a photo aggregation app into a millennial geared visual media startup. So during that time, like 2015, media startups were everywhere. Everybody was trying to get into the space. And we took something that was not working and we pivoted, turned it into that, build out teams there. And from there went to a company called Apester, where I was a VP of, what was my title there? Editorial and publisher relations. And that was like an online poll platform. From Apester, went to Hong Kong, a startup with a social media geared video production company. Had a team of 26 people there, building out social media for millennials in Hong Kong, for Facebook and YouTube. From that, I went to esports. So I worked in esports building out a platform across Asia. So Indonesia, Vietnam, Hong Kong, Taiwan. So I'd pop around the region, helping to build out these properties and, grow a website, and then also promote the esports team, which we had for League of Legends. I don't know if anybody's a gamer who's listening, but League of Legends was the big game that we had a team with. Then from there to HSBC, so banking and finance, where I led the APAC content digital as a channel section. So anything public facing on the website that you would see in Asia before you log into the bank, that's what I did. And then from there over to Singapore and at LinkedIn as a part of the LinkedIn news team, heading up APAC region for LinkedIn News, and India was a part of that as well too for a period of time, and then over to Gong and more marketing, right? So a lot of this is bounced around, but it's all had that content theme and that content tie. And then more recently, in the last few years, it's been more into the marketing side of things, content marketing, with Gong and now with Green Slate. That's the
That's
rapid fire version.
that's I think amazing, and I think it's just so enriching to see. I think the whole worldview of content. I think you would have seen almost all different paradigms and
So
perspectives.
many.
It's just amazing. And uh, Chris, tell us, because you've been through so many industries, right?
Mm.
You mentioned this media, this tech, this banking, advertising, all these different segments, or esports. How has your ability to shape up content narratives and strategy
Mm.
changed with respect to them, right? Because every business is so much new context. So how are you driving and being able to adapt to that framework and then build out the entire strategy around the same?
It's a great question. I think it's a flexibility mindset. If you have a true love and a desire to create something of quality that can reach people, it doesn't matter who they are. There's going to be things that you can do from a leadership perspective or even from like an individual contributor perspective to where if you know who that audience is, there are principles that you tie with content to reach these people. And it doesn't matter if they're gamers, if they're interested in wealth management at a bank, if they're career focused, if you get to know them and really think of them as that puzzle and try to understand them and learn them and really just know the audience, you could work across anything. And this is particularly true for those who are heading content, who are leading content, because you can find those experts who know more than you as well. So if you have the mindset where you're going to go and lead a team in Taiwan, for example, you're not Taiwanese. You can't expect to know the local culture and understand the people. You have to get people there who are a part of that and then help them with what you know, with your expertise, with the strategies that you want to bring in, but really leverage and listen to them and understand them and build off of that. So for me, it's really getting to know the audience and finding people on your team who can be that audience and represent that audience in the content that you're creating.
That's amazing. Could you maybe give us an example of similar such situation you were at in maybe say HSBC or when you're doing the esports thing,
Mm.
where context and cultural context was very different,
Mm.
and content is a lot linked to culture. And how did you go about navigating this successfully? Maybe one or two anecdotes would be amazing.
Sure. So let's see. If I go to gaming, all right, let's go to Hong Kong Esports, which was Game Media Asia within Hong Kong Esports. So we had one website in Vietnam and we had another one in Taiwan, for example. And for each region, there are different games that are popular with the audiences. So we couldn't take the perspective of, hey, we're going to have a big page for, say, Overwatch, and then push that page in the same content to both places because they're not going to respond in the same way at all. Even if it was the same game, they're going to have a very different context as to the community around that game
Yeah.
in each place. So we would have to create a specific page for that one game in Vietnam versus in Taiwan, and then have people who play that game and actually play it. This is another thing too, is that you can't just have somebody who is moderating or creating the content who isn't actually involved in whatever it is that you're talking about. So that's one example. Another one would be more recently at Greenslate. So Greenslate is a production, payroll, and accounting company for film and TV. Part of our audience are production accountants, and if we want to reach production accountants, I will interview actual production accountants. I specifically reach out to them and have them communicate because they are the actual audience. So why wouldn't we have them representing being represented in the content
Yeah.
that we're doing, right?
Yes. No, that's amazing. And Chris, personally for you, as you've gone about building out It was also very interesting to see the LinkedIn news part that you were
Mm,
looking at. I'm sure you would have played a lot on executive thought leadership for a
yep.
lot of other businesses at that time. And I think now you're also doing that at Green Slate, potentially
Mm.
building the thought leadership for your leaders as well. How have you seen that play out? And for companies who are looking to do that out there, who want to build out content and get their leaders out,
Mm.
what would your strategy or framework be?
Thought leadership can be tricky. Um, Not everybody is a thought leader, and then there are those who call themselves thought leaders who are actually not thought leaders. One of the things I like to say is that if you're calling yourself a thought leader, you're doing it wrong. A thought leader is leading by example. A thought leader is educating, is bringing value to people, but you're not out there. I am a thought leader and saying you are and promoting yourself as one. You're just doing. You're doing. And when I'm speaking with executives like at LinkedIn News, we would go around to companies because we want executives to post on LinkedIn. We wanted them to be active and communicate. So I would go to a bank or wherever, talk to the PR team and communications team and those people who we want to get involved. And I don't have time. How do I find the time to post on LinkedIn? And in Asia, it was more looked at as a jobs website and not like a social platform.
Yeah.
So there was that hurdle to get over as well too. The main thing that we would say is that for one, your employees want to see you out there. They want to feel inspired by what it is that you're doing. So just at a very base level, you're setting a good example for your company internally
Yes.
in showing that you're out there, you care about it, you're active, you're engaged. That actually sparks people in your company to maybe
Yes.
participate as well too. When they start participating and engaging, what you're creating and putting out there in your initiatives get an extra boost.
Yes.
So just at a very base level, this is why it's good to do. Secondly, why wouldn't you? It's not something that is actually a very time consuming process. It's really not. It's getting in the habit of doing it initially that can be time consuming. Not everything is also a large article. Not everything is a big production or a big show. It is also, thought leadership is also consistency. It's going and posting once a week with an interesting thought. It's having yourself out there. It's sharing these things that you are able to bring to your industry and your space.
Yes. No, that's amazing. I think while you were saying, I was thinking exactly a lot about even my company at Pepper, where I realized that every single post that I put out,
Mm.
I think a big part of it also resonates to my team.
Mm.
And I think that's a very inspiring thought. Thank you so much for that. And Chris, personally, as you think about, people thinking about building their content frameworks, like I think at Pepper, our perspective is every company is a content company,
Mm.
and we help brands become a content company. In your perspective, and I've seen that with Gong, right, which is, I think B2B storytelling and marketing
Mm.
got a very different shape, form, factor with Gong coming in.
Mm.
How have you gone about doing that? Very rarely do you see tech companies having managing editors,
Mm.
right? So, what was the secret sauce? How did you enable Gong to become a content company?
I mean, they already had a great head of content when I came in, and Devin Reed is he was the head of content at the time, and actually I was interested in working with him,
Hmm.
and that's how I kind of found out because he was very prominent in the space, and he knew we had a lot of similarities, so I reached out. So I was keen on him. Then I found out more about the company as well too, and it was like managing editor, in this space and AI and something that is compelling and solving a real problem. Um, that was interesting to me, and so I can't take credit for like building content at Gong. What I can say is that at Gong, I helped put in place processes that would help them scale, that would help them set up for like that next step and
Yeah.
that next level. And that's the space where you see B2B struggling with sometimes is how do you take that next step?
Yes.
Everybody has ideas, everybody has things that they want to do, the people they want to reach out to, but until you can actually build out calendars, until you can actually understand how to edit articles and how to communicate and like these base processes, you're not going to be effective or efficient, and you could actually end up wasting a lot of time. and overpaying for a lot of content that you want to produce because it can get very expensive at
Yeah.
times. So I like to look at what I did there is helping to move that process along with Gong and bring in some new aspects that they weren't doing at the time.
No, that's amazing. So, Chris, very curious. How have you been thinking about helping enterprises think through their thought leadership exercises, especially with content creating a important framework? And I know B2B and B2C are very different. So, what would your overall framework around building thought leadership with content look like?
It's establishing a routine. It's working directly with them to help craft that content, craft that messaging in a as authentic of a way as possible that really shares their expertise and knowledge. For example, there's somebody that I work with at GreenSlate. I've been working with them for the last year to help kind of build them up, get them out there with their expertise. And it's sometimes can be as simple as posting once or twice a week,
Yeah.
but just you're posting things in a space that other people don't necessarily see elsewhere. Like you're filling a niche. You're appealing to the people that you're trying to reach, and you're getting the help to do it. So this is another thing too, where they don't know where to start. Where do I start? Like, all right, let's start a document together. You pop your ideas in this document. I'm going to go into it anytime you ping me and say, hey, this is great, this is not great, and we're going to have that exchange and that feedback. So you always feel supported. And this is a big part of it too. I hadn't thought about this, but like them feeling supported, like they're not going to make a drastic mistake. They're not going to hurt either themselves or the company because they have that support. They have that second pair of eyes, but at the same time, they're able to do it quickly. It can be a real spark. It can be a real spark. I think also because they're used to working with like large communication teams at the same time. And it can go through levels and levels and levels of revisions and like just workshopped all to death. And when you reach the end of that, you can lose a lot of your voice at the same time. It ends up being something completely different from what that intention was at the very beginning. It sounds nice. It sounds polished, but like, is it you? Is it your personality? Does it actually convey the message that it started with in the beginning by the time it's gone through all these loops and hoops and compliance and legal and everything else, right? So it's finding what that right balance is to communicate and do it quickly and do it in a way that is authentic and that doesn't feel like it's crushing their personal time, or not their personal time, but their time to do what they have to do.
Well, I think this is a totally excellent framework. And in fact, while you were speaking, like I said, I was just having all these thoughts that I need to rev up my LinkedIn as well and speak to my team. But I think this is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And Chris, I think moving to the most important theme of today's ecosystem, which is AI, right? How has AI played a role in changing what you've been doing?
Yeah.
And how has it, in positive as well as potentially not so positive ways, impacted the role of content in organizations?
AI is such a amazing thing, isn't it? It's a sea change in the industry and in the world, really.
Yes.
I was around when print got pushed by digital, and people lost jobs and publishers closed, newspapers shut down. AI is this on steroids. Like AI is the next. I mean, it's not the next thing. It is here now. It's changing things as we sit here. Probably something during this interview, while we've been having this conversation, is like happened that I'll have to go back and look at and be like, oh, that's new, right? Like that's the speed at which this is happening right now, and it's crazy in content because it's the same thing, and you have to know the pitfalls.
Yes.
So this is the biggest thing where, okay, how do I choose between all of these services, between all of these potential ways of improving my efficiency and adapting my strategy and workflows with all that's available out there? It's almost overwhelming in a lot of ways. So for me personally, and what I'm doing right now and how I'm handling that are the very tangible things that I can do that are as risk-free as possible. So for example, I'm using AI to transcribe interviews, to transcribe calls. If I'm interviewing somebody at a film commission, I'm taking that, having it transcribed, running it through, getting it cleaned up, then having it summarized so I can analyze what that conversation was, pull out the best bits, go back, edit those quotes, make sure that they're accurate, and boom, right? So that way I have control over it, and I'm
Yes.
not just giving something to AI and saying, "Hey, do this for me."
Yes.
Another way would be looking at summarizations, creating landing pages, things that don't require very much of a personal touch, and things that can help me in setting up an outline or with ideation. Hey, Chat GPT, I'm looking to create 5 articles on this. What are some potential headlines? And then having a conversation to help me ideate around this, and then taking that and working with my team and working with people to put the human element into it, or vice versa. I'll take what I have and it's like, hey, can you help me refine these and get them into the character counts? Because it's not always easy to get something in a character count if it's a headline. You have to really workshop that thing. So I'm looking at it from that perspective and those initial outlines and templates, summaries, transcriptions, things like that. And it actually has allowed me to be kind of a one-man band in a lot of ways, where I work at a smaller company now. This isn't a big behemoth of a company where you have a giant team and you have to work. I can go from writing an article to posting on LinkedIn to doing an email sequence to doing an interview, then to, okay, I have to scope out the next content strategy for the all hands meeting.
Yes.
So how the heck do I manage my time effectively with having all of these different responsibilities? AI is proving to be a very effective way to do that.
No, that's amazing, Chris. I think there's a lot of interesting insights around what you shared. And I'm also just very curious that as you think about the role of AI changing in, this unique question. Imagine what Salesforce is to salespeople,
Mm.
right? Which is this one ecosystem of software that surrounds everything to do with sales. Do you ever envision something like that for content? Do you think a lot of what you also described in terms of the workflows, frameworks, can like a software around content people be built?
It is already, isn't it? These are things that are out there, just maybe not in a cohesive
Yes.
way.
What does the cohesive way look like in your head? Ideally, like what would you want if you were to build this?
I don't think I should say that. I don't want
Yeah.
anybody to take my idea. I mean, if I were to build that, I would start with safety and talk about risk, because this is another thing. If you look at just the proliferation of AI content, if you're going on YouTube and your recommended feed has all these AI generated videos, or publishers have been nailed for producing AI generated content without having enough human interaction or oversight, there's a lot of risk. And even if I'm thinking about it from our company's perspective, anything that we do, it does not involve numbers, does not involve access to the back end system. Because if you're dealing with something that is payroll, or if you're dealing with something that at a bank, you have to be very careful about that, about where it's integrated, what it has access to, what you're doing with it once it's actually in the system. Are you
Yes.
asking it to do calculations for you? And who has access for them to do calculations? If you have somebody on the editorial content team putting an article out there that's talking about something that is calculating a mathematical outcome, you better be dang sure that like people are looking at this and you're not just relying on the AI for it.
Yes.
Right. So that those to me are some of the main things that I would be very concerned about. But if I were producing it myself and had the ability, I would create a comprehensive platform that could handle all of these things at any time. But I do think that you're seeing companies do that already, right? Like HubSpot has incorporated AI in a number of ways into their platform right now.
Awesome. So, Chris, just very curious, what are very interesting trends you're seeing in the content marketing ecosystem? And when I say trends, what are you, because you've been in the content ecosystem for long, what are those early insights into what you feel could be the next big thing in content marketing?
Trends. When is there not a trend? I mean, on LinkedIn, for example, right now there is a trend of video,
Oh, that was amazing.
right? So
Yes.
LinkedIn has definitely taken on the TikTok, YouTube Short,
Yeah.
Instagram Reel. Was it like 3 weeks ago? They updated their app to where you have the video tab
Yes.
now, and they also have in the news feed the Reels. So I think you're seeing that evolve in real time. I've been experimenting with it myself. I'm a group of folks who we go back and forth about how well things perform. So we're exploring that as an opportunity. So that probably in my space that I look at consistently is probably one of the biggest trends that I've seen. The downfall of X in a lot of ways is another one. I think with the changes that X has seen over the last couple of years, I've heard from various folks in conversations like, do you want a presence there because of the risk that's associated? And if you think about it, it's such a wild west space right now where how are you going to moderate any conversations on there? How are you going to ensure that like your brand or your content is being represented without being attacked for who knows what reason? Like you just like it's crazy. It's crazy town on X right now. So that's another area. I think you're seeing the popularity of YouTube as like a top
Stream.
streamer in the space, right? Like it compares with, well, not Netflix, but I think after Netflix, um, and who else is like the number two or three in this all encompassing streaming platform, TV and videos and shorts and everything, and people are
Yeah.
watching their television on YouTube now.
Yes. It's
So
very interesting.
that is something that I think you have to pay attention to, is what platform is doing what. And I think also with TikTok, this is interesting where what's going to happen with TikTok come January when the laws potentially comes into place and it could get banned. Do you invest your time and effort as a content marketer to build something there or to focus on it when you're not sure of the future and where it's actually going to lead? I have very strong beliefs on it. I'm not going to, this is not kind of conversation, but like I would definitely think about if I were starting a content strategy plan and I was thinking about reaching young folks and TikTok was that place. All right, do I do it now or do I give it a couple months and
Yeah.
see how things are actually going to shake out?
Yes.
Right.
So that's, I think, very interesting. I think so. Basically, how you're looking at it is platform growth and evolution
Mm-hmm.
and changes, which is a very interesting perspective.
Everything changes
Everything
all the time,
changes all the
all the
time.
time. And
Yes.
if you want to be successful in content
To
and
be
content
adaptive.
marketing, you have to adapt every day and you
Yes.
have to adapt at all times and never rely upon your assumptions that you have built over the course of your career. Or if you're new, you cannot purely rely on your creativity alone.
Yes. No, that's definitely something I'm taking away. And Chris, just I think last question from my end before we move to rapid fire is how are you seeing, like, what are your top problems as a content marketing leader today that you still don't have all the answers to yet? Like, what are areas that even you struggle with when you think about content production, scale, quality?
Well, I think there's always going to be challenges with accuracy. There's always going to be challenges with ensuring quality. When people say quality of content, it sounds very broad and it sounds nice when you say it. It's like we put out quality content. It's like, well, what does that actually entail, and what does that actually mean to produce quality content? It's the outreach to the right people. It's understanding that the right people are reading it. It's understanding that you have to have editorial controls in whatever it is that you're producing. It's understanding that your process is solid. Like the effort it takes to make something quality is a lot, and it's always a challenge. So having the resources and actually being able to convince executives of the resources that you need to create quality content, because they hear quality content and they have a perception of what it is, but they may not understand the reality of actually
Yeah.
producing it. So that I find is a constant challenge no matter where I've been. It's like we want quality content. We want to reach these people with the best, most incredible thing. It's like, all right, here's what you need to do that if you truly want it. And if you don't want that, this is what we'll have. So that communication is always a challenge. It's always something that I think if you want to be successful, you have to be prepared to have those conversations. You have to be prepared with data to show, okay, this is what you're asking for. I can actually give you more. We can do better. And here's the result. And here's how we're going to track it.
Makes sense.
And measure it going forward.
And just also quick question. Has outsourcing ever worked for you in general with contractors, agencies, and so on?
50-50. Honest answer, 50-50. It's either been a wonderful experience or just a disaster. And there's not a lot of in-between space that I found. And I don't know why that is, to be honest, because you engage with an agency or a contractor, and it's very hit or miss. It's very hit or miss.
Makes sense.
I think there's a lot that goes into it that you don't have control over. So once you sign that contract and you start working with them, that's when you find out.
Then that's when you find out.
That's when you find out.
Makes sense.
Right?
And are you seeing say something like SEO important to you guys at the current company? And do you see how is the role of SEO changing with AI?
Oh, AI, yeah, SEO is definitely changing with AI. You can go in and put an article into AI and say, hey, this is my keyword. Put it in the best spots, so I'm actually quite fearful for SEO writers and people who have that as a profession that they're going to be hit pretty hard in the coming year or 2 years by AI. So yes, AI definitely does play a role in that. I don't think it's taken over it yet because it doesn't have that human analytical capability yet. I think about SEO in my current company as something that we need to have, but it's not the full strategy, and it varies very much from company to company.
Makes sense.
If you're at a publisher, you're trying to get into Google News, like that's your focus, right? Like you need to get into Google News to get traffic. If you're B2B, you need to have evergreen keywords that are going to place within your industry against your competition. So you're looking at what those keywords are and how to inject them through your content, or creating entire buckets of content specifically to target those keywords.
Makes sense.
But that's risky. And it's risky because some folks will have that keyword and not build quality content around it because they're so focused on that keyword.
Makes sense.
And it can end up really bad. And that's why you see so much, I think, generic content sometimes on the first page. Here's an example. So you see a lot of like software companies with a list of like the best software in that same space on their page, and they're number one on that list. I know you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if I'm not going to name a specific one, but if you're going into that page, if it's from that company, that they're going to be number one on that list. So how are you going to take seriously the rest of the recommendations on it? If you're a savvy reader, if you're actually looking into these companies and you want to use their resources, you're not. It's not going to help. You're going to get traffic, but how valuable is that traffic?
Yeah. No, I completely hear you. No, I think that's been awesome. I think amazing thoughts, Chris. Thank you so much.
You bet.
I'd love to deep dive into the rapid fire.
Okay.
Awesome. So B2B versus B2C.
Well, I'm working in B2B, so I'm going to say B2B right now.
Hong Kong versus San Francisco.
Hong Kong.
Oh, wow.
Pre-2019 Hong Kong.
Awesome. And what's your favorite comfort food?
Ooh, Mexican.
Nice. And for you, what part of your life was the best part?
Meeting my wife and having my daughter.
If you were to be the chief storyteller of any brand in the world, what would that brand be?
Ooh, that's a great question. I don't think there would be one, to be honest. I think even if I was working for like the top company, there would always be something that like compelled me somewhere else potentially. And I always say that because like it's not the company or the brand. It's the content itself, and that content can exist anywhere.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not the company. For me, it's what I'm creating there.
And your alternate career?
My alternate career? Ooh, alternate career is in like I would want to have an alternate career, or like
Like if you were
the
not,
multiverse, or
yeah,
what?
yeah, if you were not doing this, what would you be doing?
If I was, I don't know. I don't know. Like probably sitting at home playing video games.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer. We'll take it. No, awesome, Chris. Thank you so much for your time.
You
I
bet.
think
Thank you.
had an amazing experience. You had, I think, very unique, enriching insights spanning this vast spread of experience you've had. So thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate your time.
I'm happy to be here. You've been a great host. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chris.
You bet.
Awesome.